Good morning. Let's have a little chat, shall we? It's a lot of shit I want to talk about. This might be a long video, so get ready. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night, and it's in the morning, but I've always wanted to say that famous Betty Davis line, and hopefully I won't get interrupted when I'm making this video. It's a lot of shit going on, and I just want to get right into it. No mustard, no ketchup, no mayonnaise, just get right into it. There's been a lot of crime taking place in the DC, Maryland area where I live at here lately. And one of the most recent crimes that took place was when a Brinks employees, people know who Brinks are. They are the people that collect the money or bring the money. I think they bring the money to the ATM machines. They deliver the money to ATMs, the Brinks people. And usually those people are very, very well protected. And normally people would not dare approach them because if I'm not mistaken, there are three people in those Brinks trucks. There is the driver. I believe it's someone sitting in the passenger seat, or there are two people sitting in the back. I'm not sure how the mechanism works, but usually there are three people from what I understood, and two of which have guns, or maybe all three of them have guns. But this particular incident, the gentleman was delivering money to the ATM machine at a Truist bank, and these criminals had the unmitigated gall to walk up on him, and I believe it was in broad daylight, if I'm not mistaken, and they robbed him at gunpoint for that money. DC has become, or is becoming, the new Gotham City. But it's not just DC, it's across the spectrum. And you know what? Now they want to say we want a ceasefire. Now they're talking that the government, they're talking about they want a ceasefire. But you weren't thinking about that when you were implementing these laws to scale back the punishments for these types of violent crimes. The DC City Council, even though Muriel Bowser, even though she ain't shit, but the DC City Council, they recently passed a bill or a law that would scale back the punishments for people who commit violent crimes. And that includes burglaries, certain forms of sexual assaults. And you all are worried about a ceasefire? You're talking about a ceasefire, but you weren't talking about a ceasefire when you allowed these things to take place. When you kept turning the eye or turning your head or turning a blind eye. That's the correct terminology. Right? You implemented these softer laws for these criminals. And they did it all in the name of, well, they're black, so, we don't want to be too harsh, on the black man. We don't want to be too harsh on them. We don't want to be too harsh on them. They're fucking criminals. These particular groups of people. I don't care if they're black. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're Hispanic. They're criminals. Now, the two men that robbed that ATM and robbed that Brinks employee, I could not tell, but they did not look black. They didn't look black. They didn't look black. They had a mask on, but they did not look black. So here today, I'm looking at some story that came across the feed about a basketball player from DC and Maryland is charged with wait a minute, an Alabama basketball player from DC. He's charged with murdering another man. And and this is not going to be, people are not going to like what I'm getting ready to say. I'm sure of that, which I don't give a fuck about. Every time I say something somebody doesn't like, I notice I'll lose a subscriber. Fuck you. I don't care nothing about your subscriptions. And I'm not talking about the people that regularly watch me. But if you're only here to hear nice things, I'm not the person for you to talk to. Because in the world of the spirit, everything is not always nice and, smelling like roses and spices and everything you want it to smell like. Sometimes we have to have hard conversations to understand what's really going on a spiritual level. And right now, we are up under the purge. And we have been up under the purge for a very long time. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, a friend of mine, and she and I were talking about how people keep thinking that COVID changed the world. No. What people don't realize, ever since 2001, September the 11th, 2001, the world changed forever at that time. That was the opening of a new dimension and of a new world order. And we are still up under that world order, and people are not paying attention. 9/11 hasn't, that energy of 9/11 hasn't gone anywhere. It has just morphed into different forms of hysteria. Now the hysteria is, COVID and vaccinations and anti-vaxxers. That is what it has morphed into, and murder and chaos and paranoia. That's what it has morphed into. So the world has been fucked up since 2001, as we know it. The world has not been the same since those attacks in New York and in DC at the Pentagon. The world has never been this. The world has never been the same since then. And I know it because I lived through it. So can't nobody that's younger than me tell me that I'm wrong. It has not. Especially if you were not born and a functioning adult at that time. I was. I was 21 or 22 when that happened. I had just turned 22. But let's go back to the 90s. I remember when I was going to high school. I was going to Coolidge High School, Calvin Coolidge Senior High School. And I remember how I hated that school. And the problems that we're having now with crime in DC, it's a generational thing. Their parents were probably criminals and came from the lower bowels of society. And their children end up becoming just like them. And I don't give a fuck who is offended by that. It's just the truth. It's just the fucking truth. When I think about Generation X, which is supposed to be my generation, when I think about Generation X, but I'm kind of in the cusp. I'm Generation X, but I'm also in the cusp with millennial in a sense. But let's just say I'm Generation X. When I look at Generation X, when I think of the word X, not the word, I'm sorry, the letter X. When I think of the letter X, to X something means to X something out. Generation X is walking in a curse because we were supposed to be the generation to break a lot of these curses and a lot of this shit. But instead, they turned us against each other. We were turned against each other through methods of mind control and, other methods and, medicating children with medications that they did not need, that altered the trajectory of their minds and the genetics and the DNA of the mind. So when I look at everything that's been going on now, I take a good look at the community back in the 90s and how they accepted this type of violent behavior. When I was going to Calvin Coolidge, that school was like a war zone back in the day. They treated the students very badly. There was no real assistance from the teachers that were there because the teachers that were there were not really dedicated. Most of them were not. I only had one teacher that was dedicated, and that was my homeroom teacher named Miss Dixon. And I loved Miss Dixon. I didn't care for her husband too much. He was a gym teacher, but I loved Miss Dixon. I loved her. She was so great to me. She was like the one person in that school that I really could go to if I had a problem. But Coolidge was really, really. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little distracted because my neighbors are very fucking noisy. I can't stand these motherfuckers in this building. But Coolidge was a very, very disturbing place. It was a very disturbing place. They hired security guards who were perverts, who were weirdos, who were also drunks and drug addicts. And the faculty, the principal himself, Upson, his name is Mr. Upson, he favored violent, crazed people in that school. He allowed the students who were the most problematic, he allowed them to remain. And I remember that motherfucker tried to put me out simply because I didn't live, because I lived with my grandmother. I was living with my grandmother for many, many years. My great grandmother, she had raised me. He tried to say, well, because your mother lives in another part of the city, you really are not supposed to be going here. Fuck you. But you allow violent, savage, criminal people to come to your school, and I don't give a fuck if they were students. Do you know that there was a stabbing right in front of me when I was going to Coolidge? And all of these motherfucking niggas in the black community, you all sit up, and all of you, you sit up and you try to act like these dudes are good people when they're not. This dude from Alabama, because he can play basketball. See, when you can play sports and when you are aesthetically pleasing, they will overlook the fact that you're a criminal, that you're crazy, that you're feral, that you are, a danger to society, as long as you can play sports. They don't care who you kill or hurt, as long as you don't kill nobody in their family. They don't care how you affect other people, as long as you're not affecting them. It's the same thing with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, I was looking at that movie, a little bit of the biography they did on his life. Mike Tyson was feral. And I don't care who gets mad about that. He was feral. He had a lot of fucking issues. A lot of them. He was a thief growing up. He did a lot of fucked up shit growing up. He did a lot of fucked up shit as he got older. But because he could fight, but because he had a talent, people overlook. The black community overlooks the bad motherfucking behavior. And it's the same process and mechanism here in the DC area. A lot of these crimes that are taking place have been overlooked for many years, dating back to the 80s and 90s. If one of these motherfucking murderers, if they can fool you and they can talk to you with sense and intelligence and knowledge, then all of a sudden that makes them a guru or that makes them somehow acceptable. Then they'll go around and they'll switch up their persona with their friends and they become murderers. They become misfits of society. And they cause mayhem and chaos everywhere they fucking go. But we're supposed to just keep sitting back saying, well, it's okay. We have to have compassion. We have to feel sorry for them. Why? Feeling sorry for them got this motherfucking boy right here killed. So we turn a blind eye to crazed, psychotic, murdering people, murderers, or we turn a blind eye to that simply because people are aesthetically a certain way. I remember when I was going to Coolidge, the captain of the football team, he was a fucking bully. He didn't bully me, but he would sexually harass me. A lot of people didn't know that. Touching me on my ass and shit like that because I was quiet and I have a big butt. I had a chubby butt, and I still do. And I was quiet and I was timid. He was feeling on my ass in class. And he was one of the big tough dudes dating girls and shit. But he was a bully. But nobody never said anything because he could play football. That was acceptable behavior. They have created laws in this motherfucking town to make things easier for these types of people. And that's because they want to push certain people out. It's all a spell and mind control. That's all it is. To control people. That's all this shit is. And now they want to cease fire. Now they want to cease fire. People better wake up to what's really going on. DC is not DC anyway. And I'm sorry, anymore. Is that why they really took out Christopher Berry? Is that why they took out the Berry family? With the help of Child, I'm not even gonna mention that lady's name because I'll go on a rampage. But no, I ain't gonna mention her. I ain't gonna say nothing. But with her help, because now she's speaking on Martin Luther King. What do you have to do with Martin Luther King? You're a fake and you're a fraud. This particular woman that I'm talking about, who was married to Marion Barry, you're a fake and you're a fraud. What do you have to do with Martin Luther King? How come you don't speak out about the violence in DC? Muriel Bowser, you look a little worried in your pictures. You look a little worried in your pictures because you are not qualified to handle this type of stuff. See, this is above your pay grade. And now they are no longer allowing Muriel Bowser to stand before Congress. She's no longer allowed to stand before Congress, which I think is motherfucking horrible. But they allowed that Zelensky person from Ukraine, they allowed a foreign entity to address the American people in Congress. And you tell me that there's something not wrong in this motherfucking potato salad. You're telling me there's nothing wrong in this pudding. We have murder, we have espionage, we have invaders, we have takeovers. And I don't think it's the government. I think it's something beyond that. I think it's another entity, a shadow entity that we are not aware of. Some people may call it a secret society. I don't know. But what I do know is that real people are being pushed out, executed, murdered, real people, and they're being replaced by artificial intelligence, meaning Antichrist people. So when I saw this report, and this may not be a long video after all, but when I saw this report that this basketball player from DC and Maryland was charged with someone's murder, I said, this is indicative to the history of DC. You know, back in the day, when you murdered people and when you committed violent crimes, your ass was gone, especially when you committed, if you committed a violent crime against a woman, your ass was gone to jail for a while. Your ass was gone to jail for a while. But now we have these new laws that people keep saying they needed to be changed because they were unfair to certain groups of people. But the problem is that these certain groups of people are the ones committing the most crimes in this particular area. The law should not recognize any race. I'm sorry. The law should not recognize any race. There should be no racial ambiguity when it comes to recognizing the law or when people commit certain crimes. There should be no ambiguity. No ambiguity when it comes to the law. If you commit a fucking crime, you should go to motherfucking jail. You should get a fair motherfucking trial. I get that. I get the injustice of fair trials and stuff. But they're not, this is not about fair trials. They are letting violent criminals and violent people like this person who murdered this other man, supposed to be a basketball player. You know, a lot of those people who play in sports and basketball, a lot of them are violent, they're volatile, they're feral, and they're crazy. And they will murder you. But a lot of that is not looked at for politically correct reasons. We have to start being honest and having these conversations. A lot of those men in the sports arena, and I don't give a fuck who gets offended, a lot of them are violent. Look at Mike Tyson. Look at Mike Tyson. I was just, like I said, I was watching his life story on Hulu. And it really makes sense to why he is the way that he is. It really makes sense. He's feral, he's crazy, and he's violent. But all of that was overlooked, and they gave this man millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And from what I understand, he ain't got much of it left no more. He was a thief, he was a criminal, he harmed people. But this is the type of shit that we glorify because, oh, they have a talent that we like. And then we wonder why the youth are turning out the way that they are. They look up to these types of people. They pull their energy. They want to emulate them. This is what they do. It's spell work at its finest. Your children want to be them instead of them wanting to be themselves. They want to be someone else. And now DC is asking for a ceasefire. You all are so concerned about violent crimes in the DC area now, but you weren't concerned about this when you were scaling back the punishments for these crimes. So now if you break into someone's house, if you commit a violent crime against someone, I want people to hear this. If you commit a violent crime against someone here in the DC area, it's a possibility that the person will not get the maximum punishment. They will not get the maximum punishment because they keep scaling back the punishments because we have to feel sorry for them. There are some people that live in my building that I don't think should even be in public. Some of these people don't even need to be walking around in the public. But we have to feel sorry for them, right? We're supposed to keep feeling sorry for these types of, savages and creeps. And I don't give a fuck what color they are. But it seems to me that they let a lot of these black men get away with fucking murder. The ones who are like this. I'm not talking about black men as a whole. I'm talking about these particular groups of black men who commit these type of fucking crimes. You know why they do? Because they're a part of their agenda to commit more and more, what do they call it? Not genocide. Well, yeah, genocide. And I can't think of the word right now. But y'all know what I'm talking about when they push certain ethnicities out to bring certain ethnicities in. Gentrification. The crime is running a lot of the people. Crime is running a lot of the people out of DC. Then you move out to Prince George's County. And the crime is rising out there too. Prince George's County is a suburb of DC, which is in Maryland. And it's right there with DC. You move out to the suburbs and they're out there robbing people too. My friend that stays with me, he told me a couple of years ago, he had a brand new Mercedes Benz. He's coming from a friend's house Some young niggas out in Largo, Maryland. Now, if you know anything about Largo, Maryland is way out there in the suburbs. I mean, that's way out there, like damn near almost. I think it's similar to Upper Marlboro. Upper Marlboro. He said he's out in Largo visiting friends, and these young niggas, robbed him for his Mercedes Benz at gunpoint. They probably were watching him because niggas like that, they watch you. You would be surprised who watches you. That's why black women, y'all got to be careful. You have to be careful because a lot of these laws that they're scaling back, they're also scaling back the protections for you. Because remember I told you that a lady in my neighborhood got beat up by this guy? The guy is out of jail. He beat her, but she probably, her dumb ass, she didn't press charges against him. But he beat her. He beat her damn near to her death. And now he's out of jail. The state did not even, because it happened here in Maryland, the state did not even press charges against him. The state did not even press charges against him. So what does that tell you? They don't give a fuck about the citizens no more. They tell you all this bullshit that, protect black women. They say all of this shit in Hollywood. They say all of this shit on the fucking news. But when it really boils down to it, and when you really need protection and you go to them, they don't do it. They let these type of criminals out of jail. So they're playing a game. They're not protecting women. They're not protecting women. They're not. If that was my mother he did that to, there would be no need for the police because I would be in jail. They would have me up under the jail for what I would have done to him, me and my brother. There would have been no stopping. There would have been no stopping. I would have found that motherfucker wherever he was at. I'm the all-seeing eye. You can't hide from me. I would have found him wherever he was at. And I would have kept one of his motherfucking body parts as a souvenir and as a lesson. You don't fuck with the women in my motherfucking family. Especially my mother mainly. Because the government is not going to protect you. They're letting these violent criminals out. That man beat that lady 2 inches from her life. But see, my issue with her is that she probably did not press charges against him. But the state could have. The state could have very well pressed charges against that man. But they chose not to for whatever reason. But he's out. And guess what he did when he got out? Came right back to this neighborhood to stalk her. And she had to take out a peace order or a restraining order or something like that. So everything that we see on, the fake web and the, fake TVs and shit, none of that shit is real. They are not practicing what they preach. They're not. Now, we have a new governor of Maryland. He's a black governor named Wes Moore. Let's see what he does. Let's see what he does. Maryland is turning black again. I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if it's a bad thing. I don't know. But let's see if they do a better job of running Maryland versus how Muriel Bowser is running D.C. Muriel Bowser needs to resign. She needs to resign. Because even under Sharon Pratt Dixon, even she didn't play. I'm going to be honest with you. When I look back at it now, at first I was saying, oh, that was fucked up what Sharon Pratt Dixon did. She brought the military to DC. But you know what? At that motherfucking time, the military needed to be brought to DC back in the late 80s and early 90s. You know why? Because DC was a war zone. It was a fucking war zone. Every time you turned around, somebody in the neighborhood, that's so-and-so got murdered last night, and you were just talking to him the night before. Dag, so-and-so just got murdered, and he just walked down the street to the store. Do you know how many people that I've lost in DC over the years, including my uncle? And not long ago, my cousin, who was named after that same uncle. My cousin was murdered in October. Do you know how many people that I know, that I love, that were murdered senselessly? And my cousin was murdered senselessly. Senselessly. But what they're probably going to do, they're probably going to rehabilitate that guy that murdered my cousin, and then they're going to wipe his record clean, and they're going to give him a government job, or give him a good job and get him into good job training. So when I hear niggas talking about, oh, they don't help us, they don't do nothing. Yes, they do. Niggas that go to jail, you get 3 meals a motherfucking day, and then when you get out, you get job training and job placement. They don't even do that for me. When I tried to go to DC agencies when I was a teenager to find motherfucking work, they treated me like shit. They looked me up and down like I was some shit and told me, you only got 6 months of work experience. And these were black women, by the way. You don't have that much work experience. I'm 19 years old. How much work experience do you expect a 19-year-old to have? They were looking me all up and down like I was some shit. But they let criminals get right out of motherfucking jail. They put them in training programs and give them the best motherfucking jobs. So you tell me something is not, you tell me that nothing is wrong or severely wrong with the mentality of this society. And then you get shit like this right here. Let me click on the motherfucking video. We can listen to it together. You get shit like this right here.
And we're learning more about the 2 local men arrested in connection to a fatal shooting.
2 men.
At the University of Alabama.
One of the suspects is also a former University of Alabama basketball player. Stephanie Ramirez is live in Northeast with more details. Stephanie, what have you learned?
Teacher Rob, so the university player, we're told, is one of 2 men originally from the greater D.C. area arrested and charged in the murder of a 23-year-old woman. This was in Alabama this past week.
The victim was a woman. This is the first time I saw the pictures and the title of the story, but the victim was a woman that they killed, a 23-year-old woman. You see what I'm talking about? You see what I'm saying? It was a 23-year-old woman.
Again, that University of Alabama player, he's been identified.
It was 2 men from DC going to the University of Alabama.
As Darius Miles, now we are still waiting for DC Public Schools to confirm this, but it says online that at one point he played basketball at Theodore Roosevelt High School behind us here in Northwest DC.
Theodore Roosevelt High School is another school that houses a bunch of violent, crazed, generationally cursed niggas from DC. Theodore Roosevelt, Calvin Coolidge, those schools house violent, crazed niggas from DC. But nobody talks about that. This is generational. This is generational.
And also, before playing for the university, but I want you to listen to this as well.
I swear that ain't one of your men.
That was a tearful Darius Miles getting arrested. 21-year-old Miles of D.C. and 20-year-old Michael Davis of Charles County, Maryland, are facing capital murder charges. Online, it says capital murder can carry a life or death sentence in the state of Alabama. Tuscaloosa Police Chief Jack Kennedy told reporters that around 1:45 Sunday morning, Alabama University police were dispatched to an area by the school's stadium for a female passenger shot. Police said the driver, the woman was with, returned fire in self-defense, hitting one of the suspects. They have not said which, but police later arrested Miles and Davis, saying it appears the shooting stemmed from a minor argument between the two. The 2 groups are not believed to know one another. Now, Miles's father, David Miles, made this post to his public Facebook account earlier today, thanking people for their support. He also wrote, "I know it's a daunting task, but if anyone that is a friend of Tracy, Darius, or mine that is financially capable to be in Tuscaloosa tomorrow when we go before the judge for support, it will be greatly appreciated." The father is known in the area as a basketball coach. We did go to his home to speak with David Miles, but he declined to comment. Attorneys for Darius Miles say the 20-year-old D.C. native maintains his innocence. Alabama's head coach said today that Miles had been out for a couple of weeks during the season and back in D.C. to deal with a separate personal matter. And then just Saturday, he was ruled out for the rest of the season for an ankle injury. Then he's arrested for the fatal shooting on Sunday. Miles dismissed from the team immediately after.
Talked to Darius's mother multiple times yesterday. Very hard situation on both accounts. So
I don't need to listen to any more of this. I did not look at the video first. I guess all of the details are still being gathered as it pertains to this case. But the point that I'm making is this. See, this is what I'm talking about. And that was a woman that they shot. I did not even know that. And Alabama don't motherfucking play. See, they're not like DC. They're not going to coddle you. Alabama does not play. See, these liberal cities, they play too much with these motherfucking criminals. They play too much with them. Ain't no sense in crying now. There's no sense in crying now. The point that I'm making is this. You can't ask for a ceasefire for something that has been going on for generations. That's just not going to work. And the administration here in the DC, Maryland area, you all have opened up the floodgates of hell, basically. And when you open up a floodgate, how do you stop it? You can't stop it. When you open up a floodgate, how do you stop it? There is no stopping it. It has to run its course until some new energy is created. And a lot of this is tied into gentrification, mind control, spell work. And I just told you that they are scaling back laws. Now, the crime actually took place in Alabama. So they're going to have to face the laws and the people of Alabama. They committed the crime in a state that is known to be racist. At least they say racist, but maybe they just don't fucking play. But Alabama is known to be racist. I'm not going to deny that. I don't know what transpired between them and the young woman. They say they didn't know the woman, but when you shoot somebody normally, under normal circumstances, when you shoot somebody, it's either to defend yourself or you know that person. So what happened? Was it a sexual experience gone wrong? I don't know. But I'm just looking at the energy of DC and how DC has become a cesspool for violence once again. It really has. But because people have certain talents and stuff like that, first of all, let's be clear. First of all, these young men, particularly the one that actually fired the first shot, these type of young men, trust me, they have a history of being bullies. They probably have, and one of them, the light-skinned one, he was getting in the car with a smirk on his face. One of them was crying. I think the darker-skinned one was crying. I heard somebody crying. They say that was the other defendant, the other murderer, the co-murderer. He was crying, but the light-skinned one, he wasn't crying. He had a smirk on his face. And that is a sign of being feral, being a bully, and lacking a conscience. And this is supposed to be the next generation, right? This is supposed to be the next generation. This is why I don't fool with niggas like that. And it's not because I fool with white people like that. I don't fool with none of you motherfuckers like that. Because I understand your mentality, of which you have none. Because when you have a mentality, you can think through things. And if your first thought is to shoot somebody, people have pissed me off to, I mean, I have gotten so mad at people sometimes that if thoughts could kill, they would be dead. And some of them actually did end up dead because of my thoughts. Allegedly. Let me say that. But if thoughts could kill, but sometimes you can't allow low value, no value people to disrupt your life, because these types of people exist for one reason. They exist to test your pimping, and they exist to test you. You understand what I'm saying? I would even go as far to say that there's some demonic activity amongst these types of people. Of course, they're not aware of it. But I sense some very demonic energy, sinister energy amongst these types of people. And they are here to kill and destroy. And I don't care what race they are. It just so happens they happen to be black. But they could be white, they could be Hispanic, they could be Mexican. You can be whatever. You can be Indian, you can be Middle Eastern. It doesn't matter. Demons don't discriminate. You know, demons don't discriminate, and certain weapons and stuff are connected to demonic energy, and guns are one of them. People don't understand that energy. They don't understand it. Sometimes it's necessary to use those energies to protect yourself, but they're using these energies the wrong fucking way. That's the problem. They're using it to bully and to intimidate and to harm people who are innocent, who've done nothing to them. But they said, from what I understand, they just said that the woman shot back at them or something like that. I don't know, because it sounds kind of convoluted. And when something sounds convoluted, there's a lie somewhere in it. So I'm not going to fully condemn those boys yet, because I don't know the full story. But I use that story as a premise or as a template to show you how this society will turn a blind eye to a lot of these violent black men in our culture just because, oh, they're a sports person. Oh, they're talented with sports. But yet he's sitting over here beating the shit out of his motherfucking girlfriend. Oh, but yet he's sitting over here beating the shit out of his wife. Oh, but yet he's sitting over here cutting and shooting and doing things to his wife and his girlfriend. And maybe the children too. But we're supposed to turn a blind eye. This energy has been created for many, many generations. They will take the most violent, the most savage, the most bullying type of black person, and they will recreate them and make them into a Mike Tyson. And you know, he's known for putting his hands on women and being violent. He's known for that. I know a lot of people say that Robin Givens was lying, but let me tell you one motherfucking thing. When there's smoke, there's fire. I was too young to really examine all that back then, but when there's smoke, there's fire. And I'm not saying that Robin Givens was. I'm not saying that she's not. But the man did bite off Evander Holyfield a part of his ear, or bit his ear or something, right? But we continuously ignore this type of stuff. And what really made me make this video, some guy named CJ Harris, I believe, he was a contestant on American Idol. He recently died at the age of 31, and he had a heart attack. And as soon as that story hit, you got all of these weirdos talking about, oh, he took the vaccine. First of all, you don't know if he took the motherfucking vaccine or not. You don't know if he was anti-vax. You don't know if he was pro-vax. You don't know if he took the vaccine or not. But what I did find out was that he was involved in drug transactions and that he had a drug addiction with oxycodone. or oxydone, whatever you call that shit, I don't know, and painkillers. That's what they're saying about him. That's allegedly what they're saying. And someone said, but that's conveniently being overlooked. I know, for politically correct reasons. They don't want people to think, oh, that they don't want you to know that the drug issue in America is really bad. And like I said before, a lot of you all keep thinking it's the vaccine. No, a lot of these motherfucking niggas got drug problems. They're dropping dead because of drug problems. And that includes your marijuana. You don't know what they putting in that motherfucking shit nowadays. Back in the day, people didn't get sick behind no marijuana. I used to smoke it. But now, that shit, you don't know what they putting in that. And I don't care who gets mad. You can smoke your marijuana, do what you do, but know what the fuck you smoking. Know what you're smoking. But I'm not really talking about marijuana. I'm talking about fentanyl. I'm talking about this painkiller addiction that people have. And not only that, people have addictions to cough syrup. Anything to get high that has that codeine or whatever in it. And I'm not preaching. I don't give a fuck what nobody do. Tell you the truth. That's your fucking body. That's your life. If you treat me good, I don't care. But what I'm saying is that they're covering all of this up and masking it with COVID-19 because they don't want people to know that America has a serious crime problem and drug problem. And a lot of that shit is coming from Mexico. They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that. And I don't give a fuck who it offends. I read an article not that long ago, maybe a couple of months back, that there was fentanyl that resembled candy, and that it was a threat to children. But they're not talking about that anymore, right? We're not hearing any more about that. We have cover-ups, murders, drugs, all of this shit that's taking place in the DC area. The area is being flooded with illegal immigrants. Yeah, I said it. We're having to deal with people and their different energies that's coming in who don't mean us any motherfucking good. So going back to C.J. Harris for a minute, these are the things that I'm hearing about him. But they're only saying, oh, he died of a heart attack. Same thing with with Lisa Marie Presley. She had a serious problem with drugs and alcohol for many years. That has an effect on the heart and on your organs. Same thing with Irene Cara. They will not release her cause of death. And I loved me some Irene Cara. But what we have to understand is that people do have double lives. They have double lives. People do all types of stuff. Irene Cara had drug problems and alcohol problems, but they will not disclose her death. They want you to think that people are just out here dropping dead. And I know that happens. But 9 times out of 10, there's a cause for it. Let's stop playing with each other. Let's stop playing these fucking mind games and all this spells and spell work that they put on people. This low-level witchcraft that they're using. Not high level, but low level witchcraft and glamour. See, I'm a researcher. And when I read that man had died at 31, I said, of a heart attack, you got to use your common sense. Yeah, we know things can happen to people. We get that. My grandmother died at a very young age. I get that. But even with my grandmother, there were insinuating circumstances. Number one, she had high blood pressure. Number two, she was in a very abusive relationship with her husband who wasn't shit. And number three, he beat her prior to her having that massive heart attack. He beat her black and blue. And that type of trauma can cause organs to fail. Just like that man, Damar Hamlin, just like the football player Damar Hamlin was hit in a certain place in his chest and had that heart attack. And I find that very suspicious still. And now he's up and about off of life support. Come on. Come on now. Trauma to the body can trigger heart attacks and stuff like that. And when you're dealing with this world in Hollywood, you really don't know what to believe. But because people have talent, they turn a blind eye. Same thing with Joan Crawford. She was abusing her children, allegedly. I'm going to say allegedly because we don't know, but they say she was abusive to Christina and Christopher. Christina wrote the book Mommy Dearest, and you know they did the movie Mommy Dearest. But because Joan Crawford was beautiful and the epitome of style and grace, nobody really took it seriously and everybody turned a blind eye. Well, back then, child abuse was not even a crime. You could do all types of things to children back then, and there weren't many laws to protect children at that particular time, in that time in history, in the early 20th or the mid 20th century. There was really no laws to protect children. Same thing. They turned a blind eye because she had talent, because she was beautiful. They said Barbara Stanwyck was another child abuser. She adopted a son and was abusive towards him. But they turned a blind eye. They don't talk about that though, do they? Bing Crosby. He was abusive, I heard. This culture, it's across the spectrum. It's across the racial spectrum. But we elevate these people. Now, I like Joan Crawford. I like her movies or whatever the case may be. I thought Miss Crawford was a fly-ass motherfucking lady. She dressed her ass off, Joan Crawford. She was fly as hell. You know, all the gays love Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. And Diane Carroll and Dorothy Dandridge. We love all of them. You know? But at the end of the day, as an occultist and a spiritualist, I can also look at their flaws. Now, I may like their work, and I'm talking about Joan Crawford and Betty Davis too, because she was a trip too. She was emotionally abusive towards her daughter. Very much so. And in a lot of ways, you know, anyway. But I can look at their flaws and say, oh, okay, I see what's going on. But here in DC, they've made a culture. They have people who are flawed leading the culture, who are influencing people's mindset. You have a bunch of flawed, criminally crazed people who are leading culture, and that should not be. That should not be. Anyway, this is the occult view. Like it, love it. I really don't care. I'm just trying to make people think. Not for me, but think for yourself. And look past the bullshit without blinders on and really understand what's happening in our culture. And how we are being forced, those of us who are decent, hardworking people, who have our own lives, who are not trying to rob people of theirs, who are not trying to perpetrate frauds, those of us who are really just trying to live peaceful lives, how our culture and society is being infiltrated by criminals, feral-minded people, people who have no self-control, drug addicts who are out of control. I'm not talking about drug addicts who are reformed. I'm talking about drug addicts who are out of control, drug dealers, criminals, murderers. We have to be around all of these misfits. And we're not supposed to speak up about that. And then you have the government making it easier for them. Making it easier for these people. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but how much, I wouldn't be surprised if those two guys that killed that girl, that story I just let you listen to, I would not be surprised if they ended up getting off. I wouldn't be surprised if they found some technicality to get them off because they play sports. You know how many sports people that are famous that we know or we don't know that have murdered people and they've cleaned them up? Or who were serial killers and they didn't clean them up? and gave them a whole new persona, and we don't know anything about their past, don't be surprised if these two young men get off for killing that woman. And let me say this, I don't care if she was black or white. I don't promote violence against women. Period. Period. Especially when it's two men against one woman. You all couldn't handle it no better than that. Now, I know men and women get in verbal conflicts and stuff like that. That's one thing. But putting your hands and then shooting, I don't know if they put their hand, but shooting, that's something totally different under normal circumstances. Excuse me for that. So don't be surprised if they get off, because they're letting a lot of these types of men off. They're letting a lot of these types of men off. They're letting them off. And then the police officers that made the community safe, they're firing them or creating bogus racist charges to have them dismissed. A lot of times, I'm not talking about certain things. I'm talking about what goes on that we don't know. I'm not talking about public stuff, but I'm talking about things that go on that we don't know in the dark. A lot of times, I don't think some of these people are racist. I think they're getting them off of the police force because they see things and they know certain things are not right. And they know what their agenda really is, which is to create the purge. And you all have seen the movie The Purge. And that's what we're living in. We're living in the motherfucking purge, and we don't even know it. They started it in Chicago, remember? They started it in Chicago, and now it's coming across the country. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Think for yourself. That's all I'm saying. Think for yourself, and you let your spirit guide you. You let your spirit guide you. And let me say this too. Make sure you choose the right chalice. And don't have expectations for people. Make sure you choose the right chalice. And maybe I'll come back and talk more about that.